Have you ever just stopped and wondered how this 3-pound organ sitting inside your skull can create poetry or prose or even just a simple conversation? Well, today we are going deep. We're going to decode the brain's language code, how we build it, how we use it, and what happens when it breaks.
So here's the game plan. We're going to kick things off with a central mystery of language itself. Then we'll look for clues when things go wrong. We'll see how we build language from the ground up, bust a few myths about practice, and even learn how to hack our own memory. And finally, we'll put all the pieces together to see what it tells us about the brain's incredible design. All right, let's dive right in. The thing about language is we use it so effortlessly, all day, every day, that we forget what an absolute miracle it is. And that is the code we're here to crack. I mean, really think about it. How does all that tissue and electricity become, well, the words you're hearing right now? It's this amazing puzzle that sits right at the intersection of neuroscience and psychology, and it's the mystery we're going to unravel today. You know, sometimes the best way to figure out how a complex machine works is to look at a broken one. By studying how language falls apart after brain damage, scientists can basically act like detectives, right? They're piecing together clues to reveal the original blueprint.
And here's the key idea behind that. Researchers look for patients with really specific problems, where, say, their language is damaged, but everything else is totally fine. A condition like agrammatism, where grammar gets all jumbled up, becomes this amazing forensic tool. It helps us reverse engineer how the system was supposed to work in the first place. So what does that actually look like? Well, take a theory called the trace-deletion hypothesis. It helps explain why some patients get really confused by a simple sentence like, "The boy was kissed by the girl." You see, the boy has been moved to the front even though he's the one receiving the action. The theory says a healthy brain leaves this little mental trace to track that movement. But for these patients, that trace gets deleted, so they get confused about who was doing the kissing. But of course, science is never that simple. It's all about the debate. This theory isn't the only one out there. Other scientists argue the problem isn't about moved words at all, but about connecting words, like figuring out who he or she is in a long story. And this debate, this back and forth, is absolutely crucial. It's how we slowly but surely map out all the different jobs our language system is doing.
Okay, so looking at a broken system gives us some amazing clues, but that's only half the story. To get the full picture, we have to see how the system gets built in the first place. How do we all go from babies who know nothing to fluent speakers?
And this brings us to a really revolutionary idea from a linguist named Stephen Krashen. He argued that we don't acquire language by speaking it, but by understanding it. The secret sauce is something he calls comprehensible input. It's kind of like a video game, right? You get better when you're on a level that's just a little bit challenging. Not too easy, but not impossible. It's all about that sweet spot. And this slide just lays out the process perfectly. It all starts with that comprehensible input. But look at step 2. This is just as important. You need a low affective filter. It's just a fancy way of saying you have to be relaxed, motivated, and not stressed out. And when those two conditions are met, your brain just picks it up, subconsciously. Speaking, you'll notice, is the very last step. It's the result of learning, not the cause. This quote from Krashen really just nails it. And the theory is backed up by some incredible case studies. Get this. There was a boy who was physically unable to speak, but he grew up understanding English perfectly. Why? Because he had years and years of comprehensible input. His brain acquired the language even though he never said a single word. So if understanding is really the key, what does that mean for the way most of us were taught a second language in school? With all those grammar drills and being forced to speak before we were ready. Okay, so here's the crucial difference Krashen talks about. On the left, you've got acquisition. That's subconscious. It's like how you picked up your first language. It just feels natural. On the right, you have learning. That's your high school Spanish class, consciously memorizing verb charts. Your fluent gut feeling speech, that comes from acquisition. That moment you have to stop and think about a grammar rule, that's your learned system trying to play catch-up. And it's way, way slower. And you see this play out perfectly with kids learning their first language. Studies found that parents almost never correct their kids' grammar. If a kid says something like, "her curl my hair," the parent is like, "Yes, she did." But if the kid says a grammatically perfect sentence like, "Walt Disney comes on Tuesday," and the show is actually on Wednesday, that's when they get corrected. It proves it's all about the message, not the form.
Now, even though that subconscious acquisition is what builds real fluency, we still have to consciously learn some things, like vocabulary. And to do that, we have to fight one of our brain's most basic instincts, to forget stuff.
This is the forgetting curve. It basically shows how fast our memories fade. And yeah, the bad news is our brains are designed to let go of information it thinks isn't important. But the good news, we know exactly how to fight back.
The trick is to work with your brain's design, not against it. It's a technique called spaced repetition. So instead of cramming, you review information at just the right moment, right before you're about to forget it. Every time you force your brain to pull that memory back from the brink, you're sending a powerful signal that says, hey, this is important, keep it. And that's what locks it in for the long haul. And this makes it super practical. You can follow a simple schedule just like this one. By reviewing at these specific intervals, you are interrupting that forgetting curve at the most efficient moments. This is how you build durable, long-term memories and make your study sessions way more effective.
All right, let's zoom all the way out now and put all of these puzzle pieces together. We've seen how language can break in very specific ways, and we've seen how we acquire it through understanding. So what does all this tell us about how our brains are actually built for language? It really brings us back to this fundamental question about our own minds. Is our language ability like one big all-purpose kitchen knife that does everything? Or is it more like a Swiss Army knife, a whole toolkit full of specialized, independent tools? Well, all the evidence we've looked at points in a very clear direction. The evidence is pretty compelling. So clue number 1, agrammatism. It shows us that the brain's sentence-building rules can break down, while everything else stays perfectly fine. And clue number 2, cases like the savant Christopher. He could learn tons of words, but couldn't really string them together into complex sentences. Both clues are pointing to the exact same conclusion. And that conclusion leads us to a theory called internal modularity. It's the idea that our language ability isn't just one single thing. It's made up of separate components, or modules. So you've got a module for your vocabulary, another for word endings, and another one just for sentence structure. They all work together, but they're independent tools. The brain's language center really is a Swiss Army knife. And look, understanding this design isn't just some abstract scientific exercise. It changes everything. It means we should think differently about how we learn, how we teach, and what's possible. The brain isn't just a single muscle you train. It's a whole toolkit. And if we can understand what each tool does, we can finally start to unlock our own true potential.
Like, share, and subscribe to Mr. SKT.